Okay, we're going to do the exercise where we create horizontal geometry. And so we don't need our profile window from the previous exercise. I can close view number 2. And we also don't need MicroStation AccuDraw. So we have the Civil AccuDraw docked at the bottom here. MicroStation AccuDraw was down there as well. I'm going to go ahead and disable MicroStation AccuDraw, or just close the MicroStation AccuDraw. And open the feature definitions toggle bar. I already have my feature definitions toggle up here. And if I didn't have that, I could go and turn that on with this button right here. And so it's already in the list up the top. We want to go through our list and set feature definition of linear feature definition for roadway and road centerline. Road underbar centerline is our feature definition, and then we also want to click the button right beside that and set the active feature definition. So as I'm placing my geometry, anything I create is going to be placed using this feature definition, which then points to element templates and all my MicroStation attributes as well, level, color, and all of that. We're going to zoom in to the north end of mountain highway geometry. So you can zoom in to the north end of this mountain highway, which one's north-south, and we want to enable Civil AccuDraw down at the bottom. So I'll toggle that on. And if this toolbar wasn't visible, you would need to go to the Tools drop down, and there's a Civil AccuDraw. We can toggle that toolbar on and off. And so now that I've got that enabled, I also want to make sure I select Station Offset for my coordinate system. So we're working in plan view, so my settings that I have here, I'm going to be using Station Offset. And we want to select line between points. We're going to be placing our geometry in pieces here. We'll place a line or a tangent, and then we'll place a curve or an arc. And we'll be placing these pieces in separately and going back, and we can complex the geometry. And so I click on line between points, and we want to type in the letter O to instruct Civil AccuDraw to locate the origin element. So I want to hit the letter O on my keyboard. Sometimes I might need a tab to one of my other fields, so I can click on O, and it should ask me to select a reference element or reset to return to the command. And I'm going to locate my reference, which is the highway, mountain highway there. Click on that geometry. And now that's my reference for station offset. I can type in a station and offset value. We're going to use 411.00 for my station. And you can see it puts me into that station, and now I'm going to key in an offset. The offset we're going to use is 0. So key that in, and I can hit enter or tab, and it'll lock in that value. And then I can left click to accept, and it places the first point there. And then I want to place the next one at a X and Y value. So I'm going to go down to my Civil AccuDraw and click on XY. And we want to go place this at an X value 283.68.95. Key that in, hit enter or tab on my keyboard, and then type in the Y value 128.60.59. Key that in and lock it in. And now you can see as I move my cursor, it's only allowing me to place a point at that location. So I can left click to accept or left click to place that second point. And now we've got our first geometry line. We're going to continue from here, but we're going to disable Civil AccuDraw and just use the commands on the geometry dialog or the geometry prompts. So I'll toggle off Civil AccuDraw, and we're going to place another line between points coming off of that previous tangent. So I'm going to snap to the east end of that line that I just created. So my AccuSnap was present there. I saw a yellow X, and I just left clicked on that to snap to the end of the line. and we want to create this line with a distance of 50, 25. So you can see the distance value when it asks me to enter in the endpoint distance. If I hit my right arrow key, I also see line direction. So we're going to type in a distance of 50, 25, hit enter to lock in that distance, and now you can see it, only the bearing is allowed to change. Hit my right arrow key and I can type in a direction of S27 colon 57 colon 06 E. So I have to key it in with the format exactly like this in bearings, or you could also use, instead of colon, you can use a caret after your degree for a degree symbol, single quote for minutes, and double quote for seconds. So key that in, hit enter to lock it in, and it puts in that direction. If you type in something incorrectly and hit enter, it just won't recognize what you typed in. So now that I've got that correct, I'm going to left click to place the second point, or data point to accept that proposed location. And now we want to put an arc in between those two. So I'll go over here to Simple Arc, click on that button there, and grab that tool, and we're going to locate the first element, which is the line right here coming off of Mountain Highway, the first line we created. Locate the second element, that's one we just created second. Click on that, and currently I've got a radius checked on, so it's locking in that radius, but typically it gives a kind of a dynamic radius. You can see as I move my cursor, it gets larger or smaller. I can put it on either side. We want to type in our radius value, so we're going to put it down in the southwest quadrant, but I want to type in a radius of 2875, hit enter to lock in that value, and left click to place it in there. We got to trim both the first and second element. If I hit my down arrow key, I can cycle through the other options, but I just want to trim both tangents, and you can see how that creates. And now I'm still in the command. I can go and create more arcs, but we want to create our arc in a different way. Coming off the next tangent, we're going to use Simple Arc from Element. So I'll click on Simple Arc from Element, and then I will follow my prompts, select my second tangent here, and then I get to actually pick where I want to start my arc coming off of this. I can start it actually somewhere along the line, but we want to start at the end. So I'm going to snap to the end of that line that we created, and I can lock in a radius. I'm going to type in a radius value of 24, 25 and hit enter to lock in that radius. And then we want this to turn to the right. So we want to move it back in here towards Mountain Highway. You're allowed to go in either direction. For radius, I don't have to type in the negative sign for my left curve. And so now that I've got it positioned in this way, I'm going to data point to accept the radius and the direction, and then it's going to ask me for a length. And so the arc length we're going to use is 1550. Key that in and hit enter to lock in that value, and left click to begin placing it. We need to trim or extend the previous element, which is that previous tangent. We want to trim that in case we, for some reason, didn't start at the very end of that line. We could trim it. So trim back, left click to accept, and we're ready to add the remaining lines and arcs. So the next one is going to be a simple line from element. So we're going to draw a line coming off that curve. There's simple line to element, simple line from element. Click on that command, left click on the element that we're going to be creating a line from, left click to start your point right there at the end of that curve, and then we got to key in our distance. We're going to do a length or an end distance of 2500. Key that in and hit enter to lock that in, and data point to accept, And when it asks us to trim/extend, we're going to select back. If that's not already selected, again, you have your up and down arrow keys to cycle through those. I'm just going to leave it set to back and left click, and it places that tangent. And I'm going to keep moving along here. We're moving down towards that pink microstation graphic element down there, which has no intelligence on it, just a microstation line, whereas the lines that we're creating that are red are actually civil geometry, and you'll see the difference on those in a minute. But I want to now place basically a tangent. We're going to do line between points, and we're going to snap to the end of the line we just created, and then snap to the end of that purple line. So we're going to connect those with connect the gap there with just a line between the points. So click on that command, snap to the end of this line, and then snap to the end of that purple line. And then we're going to create an arc, simple arc in between those two red lines that I created, those last two geometry elements. So go to simple arc and locate the first portion of that, and then left click on the second element, which is the last one I created. And I can key in my radius here and lock in a value for the radius of 1650. So type that in, hit enter on my keyboard, it locks it in, and I'm going to left click to make sure it's going to be placed on the inside where the curve should belong, right? So left click over here to the right, trim both elements. So left click and it trims those elements and puts the curve in there. And now our geometry should look something similar to what I've got on the page here, what I've got on my screen. Right? And so these, each one of these are geometry elements, and I could click on them and they're all editable, and you can see the manipulators, and there's also the handlers we can grab and move. This isn't as editable because it's actually snapping to a microstation element. So down here, everything purple is microstation. So those don't have any intelligence on them. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to do a complex by elements. We're going to group all of these into one geometry element and give it a good name for our center line of whatever this road is, and we'll see how editable it is. And the way we create it, depending on what tool we use, we see different commands. So for some of those curves, we did the simple arc, and for others, we used arc from element. And we'll see how the editing options are different. As well, when we get to the microstation, there'll be really not much editing of your, you won't see any manipulators or handlers. So we want to select the complex by element over here under my horizontal geometry tools. And this is going to be automatic. So you just need to click at the very beginning and it's going to figure out what path to run down. But we need to give it a name. So I need to type in a name of River Road for my feature name. I'm going to use the active feature definition. So it's going to put it under road centerline for my feature definition. And this pink arrow points in the direction that it's going to go. So if I click on the wrong part of this tangent, it's not going to create the whole thing, it's just going to create this one tangent. But if I click at the very beginning, the very start of that first tangent, left click there, it highlights the whole geometry all the way down to the end. Connects all the lines. And we want to go ahead and create geometry out of that. We'll go back and change some things, but go ahead and left click to accept the complex element. And we've created River Road.